Yes, sir. Look, I guess the YouTube algorithm felt like this video was necessary for me to see, and honestly, going through the comments and shit like that, it kind of felt like it's necessary because everybody is in this lost, walking dead zombie mindset. It's not even funny. Nobody's thinking outside of the box. Nobody wants to be a critical thinker. Nobody wants to go against the grain. And when I say against the grain, that's basically the liberal side. When you're a so-called black man, we're gonna have to go against the tide because one, we're going against our higher power, and for two, we have to save everybody else because that's basically who we are. It's going to be left in our hands. We have these black media outlets, the Breakfast Club, even Hot 97. What you have, the Shade Room, Baller Alert, World Star. The list goes on. None of them, for the most part, are positive. They put up a lot of bullshit stories to give you some little sense of hope. But at the end of the day, they're there to just keep you in this little low level mindset, the criminal culture, the thought culture, the homosexual lifestyle, so on and so on. Everything that's going to bring destruction to the family structure in the so-called black community. They twist words and they just manipulate your mindset. The so-called black community, the so-called black masses do not see that they're just being pimped in the mind. They get smacked. They're mentally abused, and they do not see that the people that they admire, that they worship, are just using them to their detriment. So they're going to play a clip from this dude, Jared Kushner, who's the senior advisor to Trump. And he basically says something that's just so simple, but it's going to get twisted. And the idiots that's in the comments don't even see what he said for himself. All they hear is that he's basically, privileged, so on and so on. Who gives a shit about that? When you keep worrying about the next man's pockets, you're more worried about the next man more than yourself. We're in a system to where these so-called pro-blacks want to scream white supremacy, white privilege, yet they want that so-called white man with the privilege to help them out and give them a hug at the end of the day. Come on, man. Wake up. Let's see what this clown says.
27th goes to Jared Kushner. Oh, the mayonnaise is heavy on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Who is Jared Kushner? Well, other than being a human jar of helmets, he's the senior advisor to the President of the United States of America. He's also the son-in-law of our celebrity-in-chief, Donald J. Trump. Now, yesterday, Jared Kushner was letting his inner voice speak out loud. Okay, this is the way I'm sure Jared communicates with people in his circle. This is his worldview, how he sees us as black people, okay? The way he sees us as black people was on full display yesterday. See, Jared was speaking on Fox News, and he had some things to say about black Americans, okay? In particular, black Americans' desire for success. Let's listen to what Jared Kushner had to say about black Americans' desire for success.
I think we've seen in a lot of the black community, which is mostly Democrat, is that President Trump's policies are the policies that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about.
The only thing that's going to help us break out is if we cut all the bullshit and return to our higher power, and then we start from there.
He can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful.
Man or woman, anybody outside of you shouldn't want any better than you want for yourself. Everybody does all these virtue signals, all these reposts and all this bullshit, yet you expect all these other dynamics and variables to help you out for a better equation. That's not going to happen. Other people come from all these other countries. They come over here with a culture. They come over here. They spend money with each other. They're not worried about fucking voting. Only the so-called blacks are worried about voting. We don't see anybody else get emphasized so much. We out here screaming. Everybody's screaming for all the years they've been on this fucking planet. Nothing's changed. So who looks insane in this situation? Who's getting looked at with pity in this situation, man?
He can't want them to be successful more than we want to be successful. None of this rhetoric is new. In the book of Karen, chapter 16, verse 2, it says, "Thou Negroes are not successful because thou Negroes don't want to be. Thou Negroes are lazy."
Where did he say that so-called black Americans are lazy? Where did he say that? They twist the words, and now they got the masses being emotional because they're looking at the man being so-called white privileged, so on and so on. So whatever he's saying, they're already thinking at it in an emotional way instead of sitting there and breaking it down for what he actually said.
Literally just reading in Alicia Garza's book, The Purpose.
So you got one fraud reading another fraud's book, and both of these frauds push that fearmonger bullshit, all that white supremacy, white privilege nonsense. Pro-black is big business, and if they keep y'all in that fear state, they will take your dollars with no regard and not give you shit back in return but hope and hopelessness. Period. You mean to tell me that this individual, this fucking lesbian, gives a shit about so-called black men? She's a hardcore lesbian to the fact that she's married to a trans man, man. This person is supporting the abolition of families. She's a trained Marxist. So if you want to know how to break that bullshit she's trying to push, maybe you want to take a browse in that book. Other than that, I got no interest.
Power, how former President Ronald Reagan was one of the main people pushing the belief that black Americans are lazy. Okay, that they're con artists who secure wealth only through deceit. In fact, Ronald Reagan called out a sister once named Linda Taylor at a campaign rally in 1976. Ronald said she used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veteran husbands, as well as welfare.
Yo, man, those type of activities go on in all demographics. We got people using their children names for cable bills, light bills, so on and so on because their credit's fucked up. So let's not act like everybody's not pimping the system. Everybody's abused the system. Yes, people in the so-called black community abuse that shit, and that's why the family structure is null and void.
Tax-free cash income alone was 150 grand a year. That's where that whole welfare queen rhetoric that was popular in the 70s, 80s came from. Ronald Reagan helped to create that narrative that obviously still exists for black people today. See, what Ronald Reagan did was judge the whole of us by a few, which is exactly what some white folks do to black people all the time. That's why profiling exists.
Perception is reality. All these so-called white people see the same image, so what do you expect from them? All they see is the same bullshit that we play on the radio, or a matter of fact, when they turn on the radio, they hear the same bullshit. They turn on the news, turn on the TV, and they see the same nonsense. So what do you expect? They're going to believe that the whole collective is like that, right? If they don't see anything positive, they only see us as athletes, thugs, musicians, or whatever. Fuck ups, the list goes on.
That's why black people have all these stereotypes, these negative stereotypes we can't shake because you...
And we can't shake them because radio stations like The Breakfast Club, Hot 97, they perpetuate the cycle. So how are we going to shake them? You know how we're going to shake them? When people finally stand up. And it's going to start with a so-called black man. Pretty much. No other demographic is going to help us. The liberal woman, she's already a lost cause. Nas, a while back, made the song Black Girl Lost. And we're in 2020, man.
People in the highest offices in the land, like Ronald Reagan and Jared Kushner, pushing these kind of narratives. Oh, what Jared did is so Ronald Reagan. Okay,
And it's just funny how he's saying that they're pushing the narratives and all that. How about you ask Charlamagne who's his boss and why they want him to play the same songs in the same cycle? All that bullshit, man. Come on.
Push the narrative of black people scamming the country and enjoying unearned money and rode that wave of white fear all the way to the White House. And then when he got in the White House, he had so much support for his policies because he convinced America that black people were indeed scamming folks that he was able to get support for policies like, cutting public assistance. And that ruined poor black folks for generations, even right now. And that's why it really bothers me, really grinds my gears.
You can't even take this clown serious. Look at how he's speaking, man. The dude who bleaches his skin and wears mascara, and then he wants to put mental health at the end of that so y'all could just look at him with some pity. Come on, dude. He can't even speak seriously. Ask this dude, Jared Kushner, who happens to be Jewish. Ask him who we are. And see if he tells you that. You go by being called a color and African American, and then you expect people to help you when you don't even know who you are at the end of the day.
I hear white people like Ronald Reagan or Jared Kushner talk about obtaining wealth through not working. The caucasity of these white folks to try to check someone for obtaining wealth through not working. Last time that I checked, okay, my ancestors built this country for free. All right, without slavery, would the U.S. be the leading economic power that it is, Jared? And then on top of that, we were never, ever compensated for slavery. No reparations, no nothing. And that, from the beginning, created systematic inequality. Okay, that structural racism helped create the black-white wealth gap. Jared Kushner, you said you read Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson, and now I know that's a damn lie. Talk to him, Joe Coy.
Man, you are a liar, and you've always been a liar.
I know you didn't read Powernomics, Jared Kushner. There is no way you could make a statement like that if you read Powernomics. Dr. Claude Anderson breaks it down quite plain and simple. Okay, he breaks it down why black families have a fraction of the wealth of white families, and it has nothing to do with black folks being lazy. It's several factors, and I don't even have time to run through them all, but we can talk about the fact that black households have far less access to everything. Okay? Tax advantages that lead to forms of savings. Ask your father-in-law about that. Jared, we can talk about the long history this country has in regards to employment discrimination and other discriminatory practices. Jared, would you like to discuss mortgage market discrimination? That's why we are less likely to be homeowners than whites, which also means we have...
We're less likely to own homes because we have bad credit. And do you hear all the jargon that he's talking about Powernomics? Ask Charlamagne, since he read it, ask him to talk to you about the aggregation aspect that Claude Anderson was speaking of. Ask him about why we don't have any wealth. We don't have any family structure. We don't follow anybody that came into the U.S. and are doing better than the so-called blacks. That means like the Cubans, Chinese, the East Indians, so on and so on. Everybody that shows you that they have some type of culture, some type of structure. Everybody that comes into this country, they set up shop. They spend money with each other. The only people that don't do that are the so-called blacks because we're lost. We spend our money with everybody else. That's why we have none to circulate amongst each other. We don't even want to build with each other. So we got to stop asking all these questions about why the white man can't help us and ask why we can't help ourselves. Why are we listening to these radio stations that perpetuate this nonsense? That got people, all these pro-blacks and all these liberals, all emotional now listening to this bullshit. And they believe this clown. That's the bad thing. They believe him. They believe that he's sincere when he know what time it is. He even pimps so-called blacks and writes a book called Black Privilege, so on and so on, to pimp y'all to get y'all money again. Come on.
Less access to the savings and tax benefits that come with owning a home. What I'm trying to tell you, Jared, is that America systemically put black people in this situation. Okay, us being at the bottom economically is by design, and that's why it's going to take something systemic to get us out. Okay, getting us out of this condition has to be by design. Jared Kushner, there is no way you read Powernomics. Impossible. Blaming black folks for their economic condition in this country is like giving rich white folks credit for their economic condition in this country. We didn't do nothing to just...
Tell you this. I'm not going to put it past him if he did or didn't, but I'll bet my money that he read it over Charlamagne reading that book. Charlamagne ain't reading shit. Charlamagne being told what to tell everybody else, man. I'm not buying anything that he's selling. Pretty much. And Jared Kushner, his pops or whoever, probably was one of the Jewish cats that was in Claude Anderson's book. And the saying goes, if you want to hide something from people, put it in a book. So people should definitely check that book out and have a better understanding of what we actually need to do on the economic side, because nobody else is going to help us. We don't have any banks. Nobody doesn't loan us anything because we don't have any support behind us, because we don't have a community. Y'all swear there's a so-called black community, but what is that at the end of the day? We don't have any stores. We don't have any banks. We can't make any loans. Our credit is fucked up. We don't pass anything down to our kids. We don't have any families. The structure is breaking down left and right. So how do y'all keep trying to ask for shit? Y'all got to stop asking and start making action. Stop listening to these radio stations.
To be in this position, and spoiled ass brats like yourself have done nothing to deserve the wealth that you have. Okay, listen, I know you didn't read Powernomics, so let me, let you hear from Dr. Claude Anderson, one of my OGs, one of my elders who I love, value, and appreciate. When he was here on the Breakfast Club, he had this to say. Let's listen.
Why is it expected for black wealth to drop in the future?
Oh, for a certain reason, because increasingly, they know that you don't own anything. Wealth creates wealth. And when they talk about slavery, what blacks don't have any wealth was because whites captures your wealth. Labor is wealth. Labor, you can't have wealth without labor. So in the 1500s, they said, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to all be in this race now. We're going to compete between the French, the Germans, the British, the Spaniards. We're going to go to America. We're going to compete to get the resources. They said, when you go to America, here's what you're going to do. Practice capitalism. That means owning the land, the tools, the resources, and using someone else's labor to enrich yourselves. And since black folk couldn't enrich themselves, everybody else came to the country, enriched themselves off of black folk. They took your labor from you. And then everybody became...
They took more than our labor. They stripped us of our identity, our history, our culture, more than just some fucking labor, dude. So that's when it comes down to it, to where we need to return back to our higher power and start from there. Instead of trying to reach to these Caucasian, man, and all these other outlets. It doesn't start from there, man. It starts with us and a higher spirit. That's it.
rich for it. And that's why when slavery ended, the average white person had 3,500 times more wealth than blacks.
It's just that simple. That's why I find it laughable, comical, on Dave Chappelle, Andrew Schultz levels, that any white person could talk about obtaining wealth through not working, obtaining wealth through gaming the system. Hell, obtaining wealth through criminal activities. Are you serious, Jared Kushner? You have no moral high ground to stand on in regards to that conversation.
Neither do you, dude. You want to talk about morals? I bet there's a handful of people that could make a compilation of the bullshit that you talk about and the bullshit that you do, the bullshit that you support. We talking about morals now?
And I actually hate the fact your last name is Kushner because I want to call you Young Kush, but people actually like Kush. You, my friend, are more of a Reggie. Okay, you ain't no gas, bro, but you are a gaslighter. And that's exactly what you did with those comments yesterday, because you're taking a page out of Reagan's playbook to paint the picture of black people being lazy and we don't desire success because we want to live off the government and the Democrats are going to allow that. And you're trying to convince your base that it's coming from their tax dollars, blah, 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 blah. Listen to me, y'all. Okay, if you have never listened to your Uncle Charlotte before, listen to me now. I am a black man raised on a dirt road in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. I have a lisp and a 12th grade education. Actually got my diploma in night school. So I am not an expert at anything. I tell y'all all the time, I am not the highest grade of weed in the dispensary. But
you are one of the highest coons in the entertainment industry, and that's a straight up fact.
I have discernment, and my discernment is telling me everything I need to know about this Trump administration, and it's simple. They are who we know they are. The question is, will America continue to let them be?
The real questions are, when will the so-called black community stop supporting these radio stations whose sole purpose is to keep you in a deep state and they do not want you to get out of that? When will the so-called black America, who claim that these Caucasians are their oppressors, realize that they will never fucking help you in this lifetime? Until we answer those questions and return to our higher power, we will never have any answers. Peace.